Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting to you live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Torah Talk. This week, Parsha Vayishlach with Rabbi David Katz, straight from the Holy Land. So welcome to us today, our beloved Rabbi, for this week's Torah portion. Rabbi, shalom, shalom to you. How are you? It's good to see you this week.
William. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Man, I still say I've got to have at least 3 hands here to work all these things to get them working in time. Wait, no, it's good to have you back. It's been a little while, and hopefully we're going to start developing a pattern and getting into a nice 6 to 8 week cycle with everybody. So people will begin to know when to expect you. And also the setup on the Tanakh Talk page, I'm trying to get it set up at least 2 months in advance, all the way throughout the year, so that we can pinpoint. In fact, we may even have the entire year laid out here soon, if I can get some extra time off to work on that. So that way everybody knows every week Torah Parsha, who's going to be there, who's going to deliver, and so on and so forth. And so Rabbi, it was really cool talking with you before the show, discussing all the different features of this week's Torah portion. And I like where you want to take it. I like starting, create the starting and then ending and then filling in between and attaching it to Yom Kippur, as you were saying.
Productivity by accident.
Hey, that's the mother of all invention is need, right? Okay, so with that said, it is good to have you here, and I want you, before we get going, a little bit of small talk. How's your past month or so been?
I wish it was better, but I mean, I was telling a friend tonight over coffee and pizza that on one hand, the work that you and I are involved in, I don't think it's ever been doing better than it is, thank God. I mean, the wisdom's coming down. The message is getting out. That's fantastic. But there's a real kind of negative buzz in the air, isn't there, with all the wars and ISIS? And I mean, I wish I could just get excited every day and say Yahoo, and it's great to be alive in the world of Torah wisdom in 2016. Right. But I find it very difficult. I mean, basically, the way you introduced me, from the Holy Land. But over here, in Texas is a little different. I mean, when I was there over the summer, it was very hard to stay Israel conscious, right? Because it's just harder there. But over here, it's just it's like my news feed is kind of the same thing every day. Obama, he's killing America, Islam, ISIS, Russia, Putin, Merkel, Syria, refugees. I just kind of miss the old days where, the postings on Facebook and such, like good music, jokes. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, even on Ice of Our Torah, it just, I don't know, I find it very difficult to get that seriousness out of the air. I miss, it's very tense. And it's the work that we're involved in, Torah and nations and everything. You like it to be kind of looser and more good energy to make the message travel. I found it to be a really big challenge with just the whole thing with the Trump, and it's very hard and negative, which I find that frustrating.
Sure, but in an interesting point of view, this is a good opportunity for us to really exercise what I think Hashem calls us to do, is to reach beyond that and not to ignore it, but to be able to penetrate that and still find that peace in the Devar Torah and to use it as an opportunity to continue teaching. It kind of makes me think of, during the time where they were in their journeying in the wilderness, where they had stopped procreating or whatever, but they persisted and did it anyway, and while they were in captivity, I'm sorry. And
that's a good point.
They did it anyway, so.
I wish there was more, scattering of the clouds of darkness and more light shining through. But man, it's thick darkness nowadays.
Sure,
it's just, we'll come out with a new broadcast, a new form of content, and you deliver it, and it's like it gets lost in the 20 million Obama things a day. And that just, in this era of social media, it's never been so rough in terms of that blanket of darkness.
Sure.
So look, as King David says often in Psalms, clouds are part of creation. The light will return; it's destined to return. And I think we saw this around 2011. I mean, I don't know about you, but I got my big kind of aliyah or burst in light in 2011. Back then, was the same thing, campaigning, presidential stuff. That year is when my life personally shot through the roof. I think a lot of people's did. I mean, social media was coming into its own at that time. I think I got my first smartphone that year. And then by 2012, I mean, the elections happened and yada, yada, yada. But I I'm not old enough to say that this is a cycle, every 4 years or every 8 years of a presidential election, whatever. But I'm hoping that as we progress towards the presidential election, it may even get messianic, it looks like, with the Syrian refugee problem. Whatever Obama is doing, whether you like him or not, based on how biblical you think his soul goes in terms of darkness, I don't know. And it's not the scope of this interview, I'm sure. But I think that when my personal opinion and from experience is that once we clear Hanukkah, which God, thank God it's another couple weeks away. Once we get towards Hanukkah and beyond, I think we're going to see just big things. I mean, the year is young. The dark month of Cheshvan, there's no holidays in the month of Cheshvan. So traditionally they say it's a dark month. And I just by speaking out loud, usually I spend my months in yeshiva, where in yeshiva they kind of filter out the social media stuff and you just get on with life. Whereas I think this year, social media has really trespassed into the precincts of the Torah. So I think that's why we're feeling it a little bit more, because you just can't turn it off this year. But I do think that, Hashem's got his plan, obviously, and we're going to see it come Hanukkah, and as we grow towards Purim and the holidays in the spring, summer, I think we're going to see a lot of light breakthrough.
Indeed. And I'm glad you actually mentioned the whole point about Mashiach, because as you were talking earlier as well, connecting the life of Yaakov, the life of Jacob, with that type of Messiah figure and what that means in Christianity as far as what type of Messiah figure, if so, would the life of Jesus and the message of Jesus actually, how would those two work? Do they flow or do they contradict? And it's going to be really interesting to hear what you got to say about all that. So, okay. Well, Rabbi, yes.
Well, so to kind of bring it into perspective, for those that don't know, probably a lot of people don't know at this point, I'm working on my new work this year is translation of a Vilna Gaon work called, two works actually, Kol HaTorah and Midrash Shlomo. So what is Kol HaTorah? What is Midrash Shlomo? Kol HaTorah is, for all intents and purposes, the original Zionism. I mean, like the original Zionism. It's called Sionit Gra'it, Zionism of the Vilna Gaon, of the Gra. It was conceived by the Vilna Gaon in his personal revelations and things that he had studied and God brought to him, in a work that was fashioned by he and his students of Shklov. That work is called Kol HaTorah, the voice of the turtle dove. That title is taken after a verse in Song of Songs. So that in around the year 1740, the Zohar predicted that 100 years of blessings, of the bounties of heaven and earth would be opened up. It's 1740 until 1840. Now, this is actually one of those kind of prophecies, if you will, that even the Art Scroll Chumash puts in its Chumash. If you look in the Parshas Noach, I think where Noach lived 600 years or around there, you'll see that even Art Scroll published the dates the Zohar gave, which on the Jewish clock is 5500 to 5600, which right now we're in the year 5776. And historically, which is why Art Scroll puts it in their Chumash, historically the Industrial Revolution started at that time period. And when that time period ended, it was the modern era as we know it, in physicality, all the industry, banking, and religion. All wisdoms, really. Everything that exists today was spawned in the middle of the 18th century. That's historical fact. So the Vilna Gaon tried to get out to Israel and Hashem didn't let him. There were several setbacks that happened to him on his way. But his students in the end of the 18th century, they joined up with the Lubavitcher students and the various Hasidic students, which goes in face against those that say that the Vilna Gaon didn't get along with the Hasidim. Apparently they did. And they put out 4 other books in a big set, which would become the founding father of modern Zionism. The works in that set, I can't remember offhand, because there are several books. One is, I always get them, they're subtle. One is Dorish L'Tzion, I think, Musada Yesod, Midrash Shlomo, and Chazat Tzion, which basically means like the founding of Zion, searching for Zion, seeing Zion, and the scholarship of Solomon. So the other work that I'm personally working on and translating is called Midrash Shlomo. And that is what goes together with Kol HaTorah. So Kol HaTorah is the Zionist work from the Vilna Gaon, where he really invented it, but it's more of the Kabbalistic, very difficult to understand and cipher what he's saying. And then there's another work called Midrash Shlomo that is very easy to read and easy to learn and easy to work with. And it naturally goes to Kol HaTorah to give the secrets over of explaining really how the Zionism works, how the Kabbalistic view works, and how the end of days will work. So one can say it is the eschatology of Judaism given over through the lens of the Vilna Gaon in his works, in these 2 aspects, one of Kol HaTorah, one of Midrash Shlomo, and the Zionist works. The state of Israel, when it was created, was very against Zionism, because at least the Haredi or the Orthodox communities were. So to fight kind of a secular Zionism, they hid the works of the Vilna Gaon until kind of recently. And now, because Zionism has done whatever it's going to do, the original works of, let's say, Rav Kook are coming back out, even though there's some political kind of confusion with Rav Kook, but the Zionist works of the Vilna Gaon are published and they're here to stay. So my job is translating those works, and hopefully they'll be delivered at the end of this year. The point I want to make is I've now translated 8 chapters of Midrash Shlomo, and I really didn't know how big of a part Jacob played, not only in the Vilna Gaon's mind and lifetime, and in the fashioning of what the end of days looks like, but as one of the premises of the book, Midrash Shlomo, is what's called Torah Eretz Yisrael, the Torah of the land of Israel. And that was made very popular by Rav Kook in modern Zionism. But where Rav Kook and modern Zionism fall short, not Rav Kook himself, but what the revealed writings of Rav Kook, is what exactly is Torah Eretz Yisrael. So Midrash Shlomo is, the creation of such a concept, Vilna Gaon. And what it is it's following the Parshiot of the week, like you're doing, reading them according to the mitzvot in each Parsha, and how they relate to the land of Israel. So what you end up getting is a service. Really, it's not regular Judaism. It's redemption Judaism, as it relates to the land of Israel, gathering of the exiles. And that's what Zionism was thought to be. And so the book starts with a couple chapters on Rosh Hashanah and a couple chapters on Yom Kippur. Obviously, why? Because the year starts in Tishrei. So the book starts off as if to relate how the month of Tishrei is relevant to the Torah, mitzvot, the land of Israel, and redemption. And as it turns out, where the book really puts a heavy emphasis on, there's a couple of verses in the Torah, the Tanakh, where Hashem mentions in passing, remember my covenant with Abraham, my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Jacob. where the book goes is to say that Isaac had his merit in the merit of Abraham. Abraham had his merit in the land of Israel, and Jacob had his merit in his father Isaac. So it comes out that Jacob, as you may or may not know, relating to verse in chapter 14:1 of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 1, where the Gerim, the nations of the world, will be grafted and attached to the house of Jacob. Already you can start to hear how it sounds a bit Christian, right? Grafting in, the redemption, the nations, all these things. But it's a verse in chapter in Isaiah, which is really brought into these last couple Parsha with us, the concept of being grafted in, nations being grafted in. And as the Vilna Gaon reveals, that the revealed end, the true messianic end, is learning how to attach to the house of Jacob, and as the Vilna Gaon explains, to arouse Hashem to remember his covenant with Jacob. So there's a lot of where you can see where Christianity took, the concepts and kind of did a replacement theology on this. And as I'm translating Midrash Shlomo, it's like really delicate, because you don't want to. You can see how it can very easily be misinterpreted for the negative. But that's the beauty of it, is where the Vilna Gaon, he really keeps it pure and holy. And for example, he says that there's a three-pronged love that God has, and he delivered to the Avot, to the forefathers, that we are to arouse on Yom Kippur. I mean, that also, once you mention number 3, it just gets kind of funny, and especially with love. But where the chapter I did today, in my translation, that three-headed love is the love of Torah, the love of Israel, and the love of the Holy Land. So it's interesting that if you follow Zionism, and especially routing it through Jacob, who he called the Temple Mount a house, whereas Isaac called it a field, Abraham called it a mountain. This is the path that the Vilna Gaon explains to redemption, is really following the forefathers and placing special emphasis on Jacob, and how not that Jacob himself, but the vessels of Jacob, even Kabbalistically we say the same thing. The vessels of Jacob, how they lend themselves to a proper kind of like a service that yields itself to a redemption. This is why Jacob gave the revealed end to his sons, and the Vilna Gaon received not only merit, he didn't only merit the revelation of Elijah, much like the Rizal did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the formulation of the Kabbalah. In the works of the Vilna Gaon, something very interesting that most people don't know, the Vilna Gaon merited revelation of Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our father. And for that, there's a very kind of strange character in Kol HaTorah, again, the messianic works of the Vilna Gaon, opposite Midrash Shlomo, that Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the beginning of the redemption, which is what the Vilna Gaon makes a focus to accentuate, that the beginning of the redemption must be as valued as the end, glorious redemption that we all desire.
Now, there's
because without the beginning, how does it start? And he mentions a really strange character who works with Mashiach ben Ephraim, another name for Mashiach ben Yosef, about how to bring down kind of like a Jewish Antichrist type figure, Armalus, the leader of the Erev Rav, or the impure faction that clings on to Jacob. And this character, his name is Sarya ben Dan. And it turns out that it's believed to be Jacob, but we say that Jacob never dies, right? When the Bereshit ends. It's the messianic days aspect of Jacob. Sarya from the language Yisrael, to strive with God, and son of Dan, because as a lot of people know, Jacob blessed the tribe of Dan, thinking that Samson would be the Messiah. And for that, as Jacob says, for your salvation, Hashem, do I hope. But it turns out that Jacob saw himself, or, not himself literally, but like this messianic role that he plays coming into fruition through this dawn aspect, which is very reminiscent of what's called the four craftsmen brought down in the tractate of Sukkah, namely Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Elijah. And the reason why I mentioned the craftsman is because the fourth craftsman is none other than Shem, the son of Noah. We know that Jacob studied with Shem for 50 years. So there's a lot of similarities. And the bottom line I'm trying to convey is, I think the biggest, most secretive character of Jewish eschatology and the true messianic end is none other than Jacob.
So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I had a question earlier regarding the revelation, basically like the end time revelation, where in the scripture it talks about how Jacob called all of his sons together and was going to bless them and tell them of the things to come. But then whenever he goes into doing this thing, he never actually tells them those things which were to come. Is it because it was actually withdrawn from him to not do so, but he wanted to? Is that kind of how that went?
Well, so this is the thing. This is what I'm getting from the Vilna Gaon's works, is that Jacob's wisdom and secrets to reveal were not given to the sons at that time, but how do you say it? Like his soul becomes the revelation in the no, let me put this in a way. His soul, after it's out of the body, right? We say the soul of Jacob never dies, right? It's a famous midrash. That Jacob is the revelation of the end of days. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That the certain souls have merited the revelation of Jacob. It's actually called that. Gilui Yaakov Avinu, revelation of Jacob our father. And as the Messianic days come close, apparently it's this revelation of Jacob that will yield the wisdom and secrets to the Messiah, basically. Right? As it was brought down, the Vilna Gaon merited it, and he brought it, into this Zionism. And there's this character, Sari ben Don, which the Zohar talks about. And that character is to reveal the secrets of the end through Torah to help fight against this leader of the Erev Rav. It is the essence of Jewish eschatology, and Jacob really is at the heart of it. And I guess from what we can see, it grows only stronger as we inch towards the redemption.
Interesting. All right. So with all this in light, this week's Torah portion, the beginning, if you would give us a nice kickoff, carrying on, just dabble a little bit from last week for those who haven't followed along, and just kind of let us know where we're at, and actually how this flow is fixing to go. We went from basically the life of Abraham, and now we're going, to the life of Jacob, so to speak, in the active adult life. And so just kind of give us a little bit of an overview, if you would, and then let's just do a power play and see what happens.
All right. So I think the Torah starts off pretty nicely. I think we can agree that Bereshit, Genesis, is, for all intents and purposes, the story of Adam, right?
Yep.
Because from there it gets into the lineage, but what we walk away with is it was all about Adam, right?
Okay.
And then Parshas Noach, you have one guess who that was all about? Noach himself.
It was about Jesus. I'm just kidding.
And then the reason why I bring that up is because then the next question, who was the book, the Parsha of Lech Lecha all about?
Got it.
Go ahead.
Lech Lecha would be Abraham.
That's right. And so then we go from Abraham. We never really get a Parsha of Isaac so much.
Right.
He's kind of in there, but we never got the biography life of Isaac, right?
Right. We got the life of Sarah, life of Abraham, but
that's it. Isaac's kind of in there. And Jacob, Parsha's told us we got to know Jacob and Isaac a little bit better, right?
Okay.
And then Jacob left his brother Esav. And he was on the run. And Vayishlach last week. And we think we get to know Jacob a little better. He's going to run away from, how you call it, Laban or Lavan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to meet his wives. And we learn a lot of things about Jacob and Vayishlach. But I would say I never knew this until really learning, like I said, Midrash Shlomo. Vayishlach is interesting on many levels, but only now that I've seen the emphasis placed on Jacob from an eschatology point of view. Parshas Vayishlach is, in my opinion, I think you can say that is the life of Jacob.
Okay.
Right, that's going to be your Lech Lecha. Because look, Abraham also was in Vayera, right? I mean, we saw him in a couple Parshot. So the youth of Jacob is very important as well, namely for establishing that he was a student in the tents of Shem and Aver, which in the big scope of the entire Torah, that's going to be a paramount issue. Did you know that, by the way, William?
Mm-mm.
Listen to this.
Okay.
Since I got you on the air here.
Sure.
And I always like to bring this up to people that don't know it, right? So Jacob left his house, right?
Okay.
All right. If you look at the end letters, Yaakov and Beersheba, Jacob left from Beersheba. It spells Aver.
Oh, right.
And the initial letters, Beersheba spells Shem.
Mm.
So if you look in the Bola Turim commentary, he says Yaakov went out from Beersheba. The end letters spell Aver, that he was buried in the house of Aver, like in Torah. And Jacob went out from Beersheba. The end letters spell Arba. But then he goes on to say that the initial letters spell Shem, that also he was buried in the house of Shem.
Interesting.
So this is where we see a famous concept, and the Midrash goes all about it, that Jacob, when he left Isaac and Rebekah and his brother Esav, he went to study Torah not only in the base Midrash, the house of scholarship, the study hall of Shem, but also of Aver as well.
Can you touch base a little bit on the time span between the time that he left, where he ran away, basically, or left home, and by the time he actually showed up at Lavan? Wasn't there in the Midrash?
I think it was 14 years.
Yeah, and it was the same amount of time that Yosef had spent away from home as well, which is really, really interesting.
Right, and the thing is the reason why I brought that up too. A lot of people watch this. You gotta see this to believe this.
Okay.
Let me just think where do you know offhand where Yosef was a ben Zekunim? You know what this? I'm gonna find it without making the listeners
I'll see if I can look
get upset at me here. 1 second. Where he was a ben Zekunim.
Vayishev, is that right?
Yeah.
That would be. Let me see. See if this will pull it up here.
I need to start. Next time we do this, I got to keep my concordancia.
Okay. Oh, right. Gotcha.
Every time I do this with you, we always do this.
Right.
I think I found it. Hold on. I think I found it. There it is. Watch this. Ready? Okay. Here we go. So Yosef was a ben Zekunim, and
Zakain means what in Hebrew?
Elder.
Elder.
An elder, a Torah elder who has wisdom.
Gotcha.
1 second. I gotta remember which commentary we saw this in. Please don't let me down, memory. Please don't let me down. There's a couple places it could be if it's not here.
I will say that in this whole series of Torah Parshot that we've been going over, it's really hard to read the Torah itself and even the Tanakh in general and come to the conclusion that things happen by chance. It's like every single detail it literally has a reaping and a sowing effect to it.
That's it.
You know,
here we are in the Torah, right?
Okay.
Ben Zekunim, Zakanim, right? He says they learn by elders. Shemaserlo was given over. This is of Joseph, right? For those following along, it's chapter 37, verse 3. It was given over to him. Kol ma shekibel mezakanim. All that was given over to him from elders, which is like tzaddikim, righteous men who have acquired wisdom, that they are. Who do you think they are, William? You have one guess.
Sorry, I was looking up Genesis 37. What was the verse we're on? 37:3?
37:3, yeah.
Okay.
Who were the elders that Joseph learned from?
The elders that he learned from Joseph. It was not the school of Shem
and Aver.
Shem and Aver. Okay.
And that is the Bolatorum commentary, which brings Bereshis Rabbah 84:8 for those following along that want to look it up.
Got it. Okay.
So you see that there's, again, just to make a point, that Jacob had a huge task ahead of him. That once he left this world as he knew it, he's really going to be kind of like this angel of the redemption, much like Pinchas became Eliyahu, right? Spanning the whole time continuum of Torah, and his mentor Shem, right? Shem ben Noach, who's the righteous priest of the end of days, right? Moshe Mashiach, the soul of Moshe, returns to finish his job as Messiah. King David's soul is in there as a Mashiach ben David. How the souls go together, that's a different question. But all of these souls, they work. I hate to say 2.0. I don't know how, which part, which percent. It's not exactly a percentage, but once they've done their job in this world as we know it, their soul in Gan Eden essentially serves to bring about the redemption. Right, so Moses is here. He delivers the Torah. Then his innate function of soul, which is a very high level of soul in the Kabbalistic terminology and placement, has an acute messianic role. Right, I mean Rashi brings this several times. One is the Song of the Sea, Az Yasher Moshe. Then Moses will sing. Well, why is it in the future tense? Some say this is the true meaning of the resurrection of the dead, as Rashi brings over there, right? So there is a time period in the Torah commentaries that speak about a time of soul after this world has finished. So after Olam Hazeh, as this world is done, the proper messianic era will commence. And the souls will work together to bring that about. It's not just one guy, one hero, and right?
Right.
So, King David and Moses' soul, they work together. Also with Pinchas Eliyahu. Also with, Shem, the righteous priest. That's what the Kabbalah really serves to do, is to explain how souls and traits of divine quality work together and work in a new time period. Right? There's 3 time periods in Kabbalistic history: 2,000 years of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, and 2,000 years of the days of the Messiah, which those 2,000 years are really the writings of what came in the 2,000 years of Torah, which was on the shoulders of 2,000 years of chaos. Once you have completed 6,000 years of creation, or even a little bit beforehand, you're looking at a messianic world. So the souls have already come and gone and done their thing, to which the prophets then have said, no eye has ever seen beyond that. Right? So how exactly that works, that's what you need the Torah, the Messiah, to reveal. That we don't know. But again, the reason what I'm saying is we see the Torah of Shem is littered all throughout the Torah, from the times of Bereshit, Genesis, with the likes of Noah himself, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. The Midrash speaks about Solomon having a mystical appointment with Shem at Har Sinai. Moses being a reincarnation of Shem. The Torah of Shem being the actual anointment for the Messiah himself, says the Ramchal. Thus, Jacob also his soul, as they say, Jacob never died. So he becomes really the messenger of the end of days. That becomes synonymous with Jacob's soul.
Interesting.
And so we brought that to light. Now, to get things kicked off properly, so we were mentioning about where we came from. So this Parsha really is, I would say, that aspect of Jacob, right? Jacob, the wrestling match with the angel is largely that. Jacob becoming Israel is essentially that. And all of the messianic fulfillment that we speak of on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, to get the redemption started, which is synonymous with Mashiach ben Yosef, essentially, for lack of whatever, all of the Vilna Gaon Zionism, all of the Mashiach ben Yosef properties of that are rooted in Jacob in this Parsha. The Vilna Gaon calls that the quality of Yosef ben Yaakov.
So how does all this compare with the whole idea of some of the apologists on Christianity would say that the second Messiah, Jesus, would be the Messiah, Mashiach ben Yosef, not realizing it's speaking of the Hebrew scriptures, Joseph.
So I saw this really recently. This is interesting. The Ramban answers that up, and of course, as you probably know, he would be the one to answer that up because he fought the Christians more than anybody in Jewish history. He said that he brings first, if it was David, first he actually brought Moses. Right. He said, when Moses was born, was he a redeemer? I'm going to ask you, William, yes or no?
Was he a redeemer when he was born, or
yeah?
My immediate response.
Was he born innately a redeemer?
No, I don't think so.
No, he wasn't. You're right.
Okay.
Because not until God gave him the commandment, the language mitzvah, then he became a redeemer. Correct?
Correct.
All right. So then he says, David. Was David born a redeemer?
No.
No. But when he got the mitzvah from Shmuel Navi, Samuel, he became a redeemer. Is that correct?
Right.
So the Messiah, there's a midrash that he comes with Elijah.
Okay. Now wait, real quickly, just to connect something. So with that same concept, you could say that Shmuel, that Samuel the prophet was when he was born, because he was part of a fulfillment of a prophecy. He had Samuel the prophet, even though it wasn't Mashiach. It was the same general idea of being a prophet. He was called to serve God even before he was born.
Yeah. Okay.
So just kind of using that as a visual connection. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. The Messiah comes with Elijah. They bring a particular midrash, and I just gave a class on this, so you might want to provide the link on YouTube. I can give it to you after the show.
Okay, sure. The
Messiah is not the same as the King Messiah. The Messiah is the soul, who Hashem has let him know, just like he let David know, Bob, we're going to call your number, right?
Right.
I mean, David knew something was coming, agreed?
Right.
But he didn't know till he knew. So the Messiah is Mashiach ben Yosef working on himself that maybe Hashem would call his number. But there's no such thing as a full-fledged Messiah
from birth
until Elijah, as a prophet of God, with observable prophetic whatever. You can't say the guy at Kroger's told me blah blah blah, right? The known prophetic whatever rules, stipulations, signs of seeing it, and he gives the would-be Messiah the commandment to go and redeem. At that point, he is called Goel,
okay,
the Redeemer, which then he's called the Melech Mashiach, the King Messiah. Until you have somebody with the commandment from God, hey, go redeem, you are not a Messiah.
Okay, now that brings an excellent thought. whenever Jesus was on the cross, he cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Right? So
Okay.
if anything, that would be as the New Testament projection of Jesus would come to that time point, you would think that his next move would be to become king, which is why Peter or kind of basically rebuked him for saying, "Not so. They're not going to take you. You know, you've got a job to do." Right. And the fact that he didn't do that and he didn't get that charge at that point from Hashem to do this, just that fact alone would eliminate him from being a Messiah.
Yeah, for whatever. Let's just look, aside from conspiracy theories, let's assume there was a guy named Jesus, right?
Okay.
Just for lack of better, whatever.
Sure.
Just to keep it generic, assuming there was this guy, and I don't know what if he wanted to say he was Mashiach ben Yosef, but let's even say, just for the sake of this argument, that Jesus would have been a potential Mashiach ben Yosef. Let's give him that much, just for the sake of argument, right?
Sure.
So what it means, according to the Ramban, you would have a guy who felt he could or should be the Messiah, and he was waiting for God to say, "Hey, go. It's your job. Go do it." And it never happened.
Right.
It ended up off where a lot of other people have been in that position too. This may be quite offensive for some people, but I'm going to say it anyways. Lubavitcher Rebbe, right? A lot of people thought he was the Messiah. Some people think, blah, blah, blah about him. Maybe he thought, they thought, she thought, whatever it was.
Right.
You have, planet Earth, without naming names or pointing fingers, it was led to believe that he would get that commandment. Maybe some would argue deservedly so.
Sure.
In the end, that commandment never came. End of quote.
Right.
And until that commandment comes, it doesn't matter how good your resume may or may not be.
Right.
Right. And it really doesn't pay to speculate, well, they could have sent him. Well, no, there's no such argument.
Right.
Because when you look at the time frame, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben Ephraim, Mashiach ben Menashe, Eliyahu, all these different kind of descriptive labels, character types, and mission souls. At the end of the day, you're going to find that continuum was only a successful continuum, right? Whoever embodies the actual redemption, you're going to find out it never did get stolen. So you're not going to have to scratch your head and say, well, Bob did pretty well, but he didn't get the temple belt. Well, that means Bob didn't get commanded by God to do it.
Right.
So that means that, I don't know, did you ever watch Star Trek Voyager?
Is that the old one? Or is it the new one?
Captain Janeway, the female?
I don't remember. I remember watching some of the old ones when I was younger. But.
So the final episode was pretty good. It was that, Voyager got, exiled to a very far distant galaxy. And they actually made it home like 70 years later. Most of the crew was dead. But she had an option to go back through like some kind of vortex, wormhole, blah, blah, blah. And if she beats the Borg, she can come home, after, only being away for 10 years. I'm making up the time because I don't remember the exact details. But in the end, all the Borg would be eliminated and she would get home and the crew would be safe. But the challenge is if she doesn't get home, then none of them had ever gotten home. It's like a time warp, right? That none of it would have happened. So she barely escaped the collapse of this evil enterprise, and she made it home. The point is that if you don't make it out of that in the Messianic story, then your soul goes down in history as having not really done anything.
Right.
In terms of the redemption, Lubavitcher Rebbe did tremendous work. It just wasn't the Messiah's work, right? A lot of souls in the Rizal thought he could have been Mashiach ben Yosef. In the end, he didn't get the command to go to Jerusalem.
What you're saying right now is blowing the minds of Christians out there right now. They're thinking, how could you possibly think that the Mashiach of the new covenant is anything other than an angelic figure from heaven?
That's fine, but even angelic figures have to get commanded by God to go do their mission.
That's right.
And so
That's
if
right.
you don't get the commandment in clear, explicit terms, right? You know, as David got his commandment from Samuel, as Moses got his at a burning bush, of all places.
Right. Good point.
Right? If you don't get it that clear of a mission, then you're not the Messiah. It's that simple.
Nice. Okay, so
I forget how we got onto that, but the point then is Jacob's, you know, this is I say it eschatological, right? Eschatological.
Right.
The eschatology of Jacob, of his portion of the revealer of the end of days, really is Vayishlach. They're synonymous.
Gotcha.
And then we're obviously, after we pass the Parsha, we're going to go right where where we should go, Joseph, and then ultimately to Judah. So it's a perfect. I mean, Bereshit really is a great, just perfect storyline. Which the only anomaly is really Isaac. That probably also has what to be told in the end of days also. Because a lot of your listeners probably don't know. I'm going to take you on a little tour here.
Okay.
If you look at the very end of Chai Sarah,
so 29.
right? It's Chai Sarah. Yeah. That Ishmael died at 137, right?
Okay.
And our favorite friend, again, the Bolatorim, that Al Panei Kul Achiv Nafal. Everybody fell on their face after Ishmael died. V'samich le ve'ela told us Yitzchak. The very opening words of the next parsha told us and these are the generations of Isaac. To say that when Ishmael falls, the Achris Yamim, in the end of days, which remember it's the same language by Jacob, Achris Yamim, because there's different words for the end of days, Kates Yamim, and all these things. Yitzmach ben David Shehu Matuldas Yitzchak. Well, I always forget how to say Yitzmach. Well, like flourish. The son of David will sprout and flourish, that he is from the offspring of Isaac. So Isaac has his portion. You know, don't fret on that. He has his portion. It's just a little bit more mysterious.
Sure.
Than Abraham and Jacob.
It did seem to be that the Torah spent more time on Abraham and Jacob, and there was a lot of information that seemed to be left out, especially in terms of. And I know we probably shouldn't go backwards, but with Rivka, you know, I mean, there's interesting midrash on how and when this whole union took place, and to me it makes sense. But a lot of people they really have an issue wrapping their head around it. But like for example, Rivka, she's the only matriarch where an age point of reference anywhere is really never mentioned. You know, which you know, kind of makes it hard to refute some of the stuff the midrash teaches, which is fine because you know it's good information.
Where did Rebecca get her scholarship from?
Well, I would have to. My first thought would be her husband, who would have studied as well from the school of Shem.
So hold on, let's look inside.
Okay.
I turned to the wrong page, but it's a good thing.
Okay.
Just real quick, and Jacob was a simple man, Ishtam, right?
Right.
Balatorim, again, end letters, Shem, to say that he sat in the tents of Shem to learn.
Nice.
All right, so there's Jacob again, but hold on. We want to know about Rebecca, and she's saying that these twins in her womb, right?
Okay.
Let's see where this comes in. I think this is going to be Rashi. Let's see here. Yeah, she wants to find out what's going on. And Rashi says, and she went to search out, lidrash, right? To search out what's going on. Right, to read between the lines. Labes midrasho shel Shem and Aver. She went to the school of Shem and Aver, which for those following along, that was about 10 yards out my window, right? As we I live right on the cave in the academy of the original Shem and Aver.
That's awesome.
Didn't know. It's literally a cave right outside my door.
I'll be there for dinner.
So we're broadcasting every time we do this show from the cave of Shem and Aver, by the way.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's to the base Midrasho show Shem and Aver. So again, just another throwback to what people don't realize is Moses wrote the Torah from wisdom, and the Hebrew looks kind of benign. Oh, Rebecca went to search, not such a big deal. Move on. We keep going. But no, just littered all throughout this Genesis timeline is the Torah of Shem and Aver. And you start to realize, even Kabbalistically and literally, Shem and Aver was the original yeshiva movement.
Right.
I mean, it was huge. And when you learn the Torah of Moses on that level, the Torah starts with a bet and it ends with a lamed. Kabbalistically, that's just like the signature of just Torah Shem, right? The wisdom of Shem and Aver. As there's 32 pathways of wisdom in Sefer Yetzirah, which was authored by Abraham and Shem, right?
Right.
So the only reason why you can't see it is because you don't know about it.
Right.
I hate to bring up this term, but do you know what Easter eggs are in Hollywood?
In Hollywood, no.
You never heard about this?
So
a lot of times in Hollywood, they put in little scenes that most people miss as like a trick or joke on other movies, right?
Okay.
So, for example, a lot of movies that want to give like a big, thumbs up to Star Wars, they'll put in a little, quick sequence of R2-D2.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Right. So they call those Easter eggs.
Oh, interesting.
No religious affiliation. And so unless you know the pop culture and the joke, you wouldn't even notice it.
Right.
The little split-second cameo. So I remember it was when Star Wars, which is coming out in another month, when J.J. Abrams had his first promo come out, like a 20 to 30 second quick little blah blah blah. If I remember correctly, they put the spaceship from Star Trek underneath the Millennium Falcon. Why? Because J.J. Abrams also directed this new Star Trek films,
right,
along with Star Wars. So little tricks are all through Hollywood, all the time. Unless you know to look for it, you'll never know what's there.
Here's one that I heard that I continuously hear still all the time when people say yada yada yada. Seinfeld. That's where it came from, right? And he's a Jewish boy. And what does yada mean in Hebrew?
Yada?
Yeah. It's like to know intimately or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was basically throwing a secular pun out there, and people caught on to it, and just that people all over the world are saying yada, 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 and have no idea what it means.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right. So, the funny thing is that the Torah of Moses is filled with these nuggets and pearls of wisdom from the school of Shem. So the more you know the Kabbalah and really deep Midrashic Torah on that level, you can begin to appreciate the Torah of Shem coming through, not only in commentaries like the Baal Turim, not only the Lamed and the Bet to begin with, which bookend the Torah, but in the Hebrew itself. And
Lamed and Bet spell Lev, right? Which is heart.
Lev, which is heart, right?
Awesome.
So it's not a cute idea. It's a Torah of Shem idea. For example, Jacob is in 28:14 is going to get a blessing that the nations of the families of the nations
38:14
will be blessed into Jacob. But if you understand again this concept Torah to Eretz Yisrael, this is really weird. The agricultural Hebrew from the Talmud Yerushalmi. Generally, people learn the Babylonian Talmud. But there's another one, not so frequently learned, called the Yerushalmi. And it has to do with the law and practices on the land of Israel itself. So there's, in grafting, there's something called brecha and mavrich. And so when it comes down to it, is that in the farming Hebrew, I mean, really boring, basic farming, the Torah uses terminology that can double Kabbalistically. For example, berech means knee. Here's one for you, William. As in the knee will bend. Right?
Right.
Now, you know who took that into perversion. Joseph was called Avrech, which means like a father of wisdom. It also means the knee will bend.
It's kind of like...
You know where Christianity gets it from.
Okay.
But berech means grafted. And the Rashbam commentary on this verse says that the nations of the world, or the families of the nations will be grafted into the house of Jacob. So obviously that's ger, right? It has to be a kosher grafting. But you can see how the terminology lends itself to this kind of double agency, right? And every word in the Hebrew of the Torah ultimately has this higher effect. That's when it goes from a stam or common vernacular, even in the Hebrew, where it's upgraded into what's called an ikar, or in regular Talmudic yeshivish language, ikar. I always like to teach about this with Bibi Netanyahu in the state of Israel. When Bibi says we are committed to the status quo, that is not a little idiom that he's saying, right? The status quo is an actual law that he is keeping operative and in full effect from the time of the Ottoman Empire.
Interesting.
Right? So the real essence of Kabbalah is when you can speak Kabbalistically and it comes across rather modestly. Nobody in the history of mankind was greater at that than Moses himself. He took the entire school of Shem of identifying with reality and composed it into a mundane book. Mundane meaning you can read the Hebrew and it can look like the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Just kind of like, yeah, you know, a guy named Jacob came from his family. Or you can take it to the side of absolute holiness of the tree of life, the Ikarim, and you realize just the endless wisdom of the Torah. And again, the character that personified that was Jacob. Jacob was just some guy. Or when you read it in the Hebrew, Jacob becomes this man of the end of days in eschatology. I mean, it's a fantastic, this is really where the Torah goes four-dimensional. So that's the timeline that I wanted to give across.
Okay.
But we have now, turn if you can to 32:5 in Vayishlach if you're following along.
32:5. Got it. Let's see. 32:5. There it is. Okay. Let me see if I can get my screen back in here.
What would you on time?
Oops, my bad. We've just now hit an hour. So if you need to take a little bit more time, go for it.
Yeah. So look at this 32:5. You want to go ahead and read in English?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now this is Genesis 32:5. And I have oxen and asses and flocks and manservants and womanservants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find grace in thy sight. Now I have a question about that in a few minutes, about his comment there. Okay, and the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to thy brother Esau, and he cometh to meet thee." Boy, King James, I love it. And 400 men with him. 37. Then Jacob was yes.
Where you at?
30. I'm sorry, 30. I said 37. That's not what I meant. Verse 7. Excuse me.
Go back to verse 5 and go slow.
Okay, good. Okay. So it says, I now have oxen and asses and flocks, manservants and women servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find grace in thy sight. Now, my question was this.
That's a weird English.
Okay. Yeah, right? Okay, actually, let me see just for grins. I'm going to pull up for the viewers the Hebrew too.
Wait, no, I know what the problem is. Wait.
Okay.
I think your numbering is different. Yeah.
Oh, it's a verse off.
You need to do your version number 4.
Okay, got it. Okay, and he commanded them. Yeah, it'd be a lot different, wouldn't it? Okay, so Vayishlach. Okay, and he commanded them, saying, "Thus you shall speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob says thus: I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now." Got it.
Stop. Tell
Okay.
me what sojourn means.
The sojourn is just to live side by side, huh?
Hebrew.
Oh, in Hebrew. Okay, hold on. Let me pull that up. All right, let's see. That was verse 4, right? Yeah,
according to you.
Laban. Okay, so hold on. Oh, Ebed. Oh, that's the serve, right?
No,
because it shows here.
going.
It says.
Keep going. Serve Jacob with Laban. Then what's the big one?
Okay. Garti. Oh, Garti. Right.
Garti.
Ger. There you go.
Ger.
Interesting.
Ger.
Okay.
So Jacob was garing.
Now wait, how come it doesn't say he was Noahiding? I'm just kidding. That was a joke. Okay. I mean, realistically, seriously.
The Targum Onkelos actually has a rare English edition where it says Noahide.
Now, I said that for a very, very specific and critical reason for a lot of people out there who've left Christianity, who don't want to convert to Judaism. They really take offense to the term Noahide, and rightly so, because it's not mentioned in the Tanakh, but Ger is. And so I tell people, based on our last conversation, was, if you're having issues with the term Noahide, use the term Ger. It's a much more effective term. It's not as offensive, and it comes straight from the Torah. So
that's it. And also, here you see classic Torah Moshe, right?
Okay, right.
It's like that Torah of Shem wisdom. In the layman mind, it's just Jacob dwelled, blah 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 blah. But wait a second, tough guy, take it back up to the Iker, right? Bump it up. Don't keep it dumb.
Right.
Right. We know everyone wants it to go over everyone's head, the Hebrew, but don't. It's Ger.
Right.
Right here it is. Like, in the real time, Jacob's time period, he's hanging out in the schools of Shem. He's saying Garti. Right. I gared. And you're gonna say in the Targum Onkelos, it only means dwelled. Darit. Okay, so it's like, first it can mean stranger, alien, sojourner, ger toshav. It just, Rabbi Katz, you're splitting hairs. It just means he dwelled, right?
Okay.
So how come when you look at the letters Garti, have you ever heard of Taryag mitzvahs, William?
No, sir.
Never heard of that?
No, sir.
How many mitzvahs are there?
613.
And how do you say that in Hebrew? Taryag. 400 is Taf. 200 is Reish. Yud is 10, Gimel is 3. Put it all together. How many you get? 613.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
So you say, a Jewish person would say, I keep all Taryag mitzvahs.
Interesting.
613.
That's the name of my company, by the way. 613 Construction.
So now, is that just a little Rabbi Katzism? No, it's called a Rashi-ism. It's called a classicism. The Rashi goes very in depth here to say that. Let me just read real quick, see if I can bust it out here.
Okay.
Garti lo nasiti sar v'chashuv ela ger. I'm not such a big guy. Okay, I'm a ger. Einach kedai lisno. It's not such a great thing to hate me. For the blessing of our Father that He blessed me. Gvir la'achicha. That I should be, mightier than my brother. That behold, it didn't come true. Okay, you're the big guy with the sword. I'm a ger. Devar acher, but another stream you can take this. Garti is gematria taryag. Klomar is just to say, with Laban the wicked man, I dwelled. Garti v'taryag mitzvahs shmarti. In all 613 mitzvahs, I kept. V'lo lamadati m'maisav harayim. I didn't learn from wicked deeds from being around that nasty Laban or that nasty Esav. So, number one, is it true that ger only means dweller or sojourner? William Hall, what do you say?
I would say it has multiple meaning.
That's right. So that's at least one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, can we say that with Jacob and his dwelling gerness, it implies also keeping mitzvah, keeping away from wickedness?
Certainly.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So nowhere does it say you need a jubilee. Nowhere does it say the Rambam. Nowhere does it say ger toshav. Why? Those are separate deals altogether. Okay, we're not saying they don't exist. We're saying that there's a million kinds of gerim. There's a million kinds of lots of things in this world. But Jacob was a ger, and it has a connotation of sojourner, keeping mitzvahs, and staying away from evil. Evil is a nice way of saying idolatry.
Okay.
Okay, and it does not mean that the ger must be the political ger toshav with the jubilee. That carries different weight halakhically, and it's not even a higher level. Right? It's like saying I'm an American citizen, but because I live in Israel, I'm not registered to vote. Does that make me lesser American than you, William?
Mm-mm.
No, it has nothing to do with anything. Right? They say, well, Rabbi Katz, you can't vote like an American unless you do an absent ballot or come to America. Okay, I'll take my consequences. Thank you. It does not take away my citizenship.
Right.
So this is just this is probably one of the most profound ger references in the Chumash, and rightfully so. We said this is the life of Jacob, and there it is, right on the money. Jacob comes through with probably top 5 classic definitions of ger that I like to use. That unassailable definitions of ger that show that it's applicable even today.
That's really good. Like I said, it's been one of those struggling things for many people out there, and I see it on a regular basis. The whole idea of even just the term Noahide, it brings up so much offense to people. It's just it literally is earth shattering to some. And my message to you guys,
ger is where it's at.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, I'm seeing now our good friend the Boa Torum is saying some stuff. Let's check this out. Ready?
Okay, sure.
Let's see here. I never saw this until just now. So Gigarti Meshech Bishvil Shiyakov Yira. Jacob, trying to just like hit the ground running. Jacob was afraid from Esav. Kolkach Vikaro Adoni. He called him my master, or really it's Mister. Adoni is in Israel. You say Adoni. So if you and I were to argue, I'd say Slicha Adoni Hal Slicha. Right?
I thought it would just be Adon.
Jacob called Esav, Slicha, Reb Esav.
Now, question: I thought just Adon was Mister, and Adoni would be like my Lord. Something like the yud at the end would make it possessive.
I am Adon Katz.
Right.
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 But when you argue in Israel, if I want to get real snooty with you, right, I'd say Adoni, Slicha, Adoni. No.
So what is the difference between Adoni and Adonai?
In the Hebrew, modern Hebrew, it's I'm insulting you because you would theoretically want me to call you Mr. Hall.
Okay.
Right? Like, no, Rabbi Katz, it's Mr. Hall to you.
Right.
Oh, hey, Mr. Hall. Right.
Right.
So you'd say it's Adon Hall.
Right.
So I would retort to you, oh, Adoni. So
okay.
You see, Jacob was pulling an Adoni.
Okay. Oh, so he wasn't really. Oh, see, that was you actually answering one of my questions, because the question I had was I had heard one Midrashim that had mentioned that this was a downside to that moment with Yaakov, and how he feared and literally called him my Lord in an elevated state to soften what was fixing to happen, because maybe in that moment he he was fearful, not lost, but he was fearful of what his brother could have done to him. So that was how he responded. It's like a
pretentious kind of, slicha adoni,
right?
Just like when I go to I went to the bus stop this morning to get my son Reuven a new bus pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's run by a bunch of kind of low grade kind of chain smoking, like 7 in the morning. What do you want from me? So it's like slicha adoni,
Right.
Hello?
Gotcha. I see. Interesting. How about that?
So in Akash Baruch Hu Hivticho Kavar, Hashem entrusted him already and guarded you Bekol Asher Tilech, and all that you're going to go. Now, again, Garam Lebanov Shinasu Gerim Bain Ha'umus. This is what I want to say. He says, look at 28:15 above. Right? And it caused to Jacob's sons that they, an offspring, they will be made Gerim amongst the Oimus, Bain Ha'omot. Now, everybody and their brother is going to say, Jews were made Gerim amongst the nations. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but obviously it fits a little bit deeper if you say that, that Jacob's blessing is that he will inherit Gerim from amongst the nations. 28:15. Let's look over there and see what we find. And we should probably see our friend the Baal Torah coming through. Behold, I am with you, and I will guard you, and all that you go, and I will return you to your land, this land, since I will not forsake you until that if I make, that I spoke to you. Right? And then let's see here. Bolatorim, what are you doing with me? Where's he at? The Gematria Ma'arba Malchias. And the end of days, the 4 exiles. Let's see here. Why is he sending us there? That's a good question. You know what? I made a mistake. That was a reference to the previous quote. The quote about Gerim did not come with a reference. I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
Therefore, it is as it is. That it caused to his sons that they will be made. They're made Gerim Bain Ha'umus.
What does almost mean?
The Jewish people proper will be Gerim. Which, by the way, did you know the Rambam was a Ger Toshav? According to Sharia law, the Jewish people in Cairo, Egypt, at the time of the Rambam were called Dhimmi, which is the Sharia law version of Ger Toshav. And it's called the protection of the people of the book. And in the time of Rashi didn't get killed in the first Crusade launch because the Pope said we shouldn't be killing the Jews. We should make them repent from other ways. So that's why some of the French Jews were spared in the time of the First Crusade. So what Jacob is going to inherit, as opposed to Esav, is that the Jewish people will be exiled amongst the nations as Gerim, according to the other religions, right? Okay. In Islam, I am a Ger Toshav, even on my own soil today, by this whole status quo from the Ottoman Empire. But that does not negate that the Ger are to inherit the house of Jacob as Gerim proper amongst the nations. Look no further than Isaiah 14:1 for the fulfillment of that prophecy. Or it says, also Isaiah 56:3, right? It's called the Novim. The Nilva will be attached to Israel.
Okay. Awesome.
All right, I think we're good. I'll just close on this note. How much time we have?
Go for about 5 more minutes.
All right, so we could all these things that I brought up. We could talk to the end of time.
Right.
Really, they're that deep. But I want to bring up even something deeper, and so I can easily speak about. When you look at the end of the Parsha, and it's going to go into the tribes of Esav, right? How do you call the tribes again? They're a word, chiefs. I'm sorry, chiefs.
Okay.
The chief of the nation of Edom. You have 2 things that are fascinating here. You have the conception of Amalek, literally, Esav through incest gives birth to Amalek, which becomes the genealogical Amalek. And all the Amalekite, back highways of perversion through incest and all these things. That's how they operate. But you have also the 7 kings of Edom, right? And they all died, and the 8th king didn't die. That's chapter 36, 31.
Okay.
Okay? And the 8th king was Hadar, and he didn't die. And his wife, none of them had a wife by name, but he did. And his wife's name was Mehitavel. That's in verse 39. The Zohar, the Rizal, and all of normative Kabbalah teaches this is where we learn the creation of the world, along with Jacob and the sticks that he used for the sheep that were mounting to create.
Right.
Akudim, Nekudim, and Berudim. And Kabbalah, Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim, which was the creation of the world. So Jacob and in his younger days through the end of the Parsha is the totality of pretty much all of Lurianic Kabbalah. And when you go into it and you learn that Hadar, this 8th king that didn't die, is really synonymous with Mashiach, the light of creation that came new and repaired the universe. And the gematria of his wife's name, Mehitavel, 97, is the gematria of the unification of the male-female aspect. And this is the sum of all Kabbalah. So you really have everything in our Parsha: Torah, Shem, historical, eschatology, Kabbalah, the breaking of the vessels, Kabbalah. Ger, mitzvot. You really have Amalek. You have the entire mission statement of Mashiach ben Yosef. The eradication of Esav and Amalek and the building of the temple ultimately comes out of that. This temple is where this Parsha is where it's at for all that. And my personal favorite, and I'll end on this is the source in 32:25. Vayivater Yaakov levado v'yavek ish imo ad alus hashachar. Jacob was left alone, and he wrestled the man/angel until the wee hours of the morning. So this is where wrestling finds its roots as well.
Interesting. And just another thought: why is it that that people don't try to come to the conclusion that he was wrestling the New Testament figure there too?
So I'm going to tell you who that is, by the way.
Okay.
So when it says that the Sar of Esav, the angel of Esav, get this is mind-blowing. He was not wrestling the Samach Mem. He was wrestling in Torah. Had Esav been Mashiach ben Yosef like he should have been, Esav Gematria Shalom, he would have had Michael as his angel, and for that Jacob wrestled Michael, the Kohen Gadol above. Jacob won, and he inherited the name Israel because he inherited not only Mashiach ben David's role through his seed, but Mashiach ben Yosef's as well.
Unbelievable. Rabbi,
and to close on that,
okay,
it was not Jacob that was limping at the end. He actually made the angels so just defeated, he knocked the angelic aspect out of him, and it was the angel who limped off. Oh,
wow. That's just crazy. Interesting stuff, though. You know what's funny? Without all this, the teachings from the Midrashim, and even just the idea of using the sticks of poplar and stuff to create these different spotted sheep and stuff. I mean, that right there tells me that there was something mystical going on there. I mean, this is not common behavior. So hope that helps some people wrap their head around it just a little bit more. So, Rabbi, I've had a blast. I can't wait to see you on the next cycle. Everybody check the schedule on Tanakh Talk for the Torah Parsha for the weeks coming up ahead. Again, all of our schedule broadcasting is on Sundays from here on. So we'll see you next week, same time, same place. And Rabbi, I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sounds good.
Shalom, my friend. Thank you.
כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה והכמיהה.